Well, hey, everybody, this is John Craig, and you're back again for another edition of Let Us Reason Together. And yeah, we've already entered in on the Gregorian calendar a new year. And I haven't seen y'all since last year. No, anyway, okay. Yeah, that's old. Isn't that old? Okay. All right. No, yeah, took a break and celebrated our anniversary. Pastor Sandy and I have been married for 30 years. And so we did take some time off to celebrate that. And we appreciate everybody that's just stuck with us and had a great break over the holiday season. Let's just call it that, the holiday season, and that you're able to take some time off, spend it with some family, and take some time just to relax and reflect and maybe have a little bit of a breakup. I know that a lot of people get Christmas Day off because that's the country that we live in, and the New Year's Day off because that's the country we live in. And it was honestly, to have days like that off, it just breaks up the week, and it was nice to have that time off as well, where it gives you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Make sure you give us a thumbs up tonight and like, share, and subscribe. And then also, do you know something else that affects the algorithms? That if you go in and after the show and you put a comment in, then it also helps out as well. So put in a comment, put down your thoughts, say, hey, this is what I thought about the show, or whatever you want to say. Hopefully it's positive. Hopefully there's no trolls that get on there, but yeah, just saying. I hope everybody's staying warm. I know parts of the country right now is really cold. It's a little on the chilly side here. It's 29 degrees and dropping. And they said we might get snow on Thursday. Can you believe that? I don't know. I have to wait to see if that'll actually happen. They were getting some snow up north of us this evening, about an hour north or so. Okay, we've been studying the book of Enoch. We're going to get there in just a second. And I pulled up the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, kind of give you an idea of a different type of calendar, but it comes out of this area of the book of Enoch that we've been studying. If you remember in the last couple of weeks that when we were studying, we were going through about all these gates and the movement of the sun and the moon, and it was talking about actually the different quarters of the year. Like this quarter, the sun goes through this gate, and then in this quarter it goes through another gate, and it's talking about the lights of the sky, and it was talking about the different constellations. But what was very interesting about all this is that in the course of the movement of the constellations and the movement of the sun and the moon and the counting of the months, not lunar months, but the counting of the months, the 364 day, all of that is actually outlined perfectly for us in the book of Enoch. Now, of course, I said astronomer. Oh my goodness. And so when I'm reading through all that stuff, I need to have visuals. I need to have certain things in front of me in play so I can say, okay, when he says it's going through this gate, this is what it means. But that's what those last few chapters that we're going through were talking about. But of all different things, did you notice that there was one particular angelic figure by the name of Uriel that was teaching Enoch? Yeah. So it was teaching Enoch, and because of that, what I learned was that Uriel, the angel Uriel, that he was called the angel of light, the angel of light. Now, a lot of times, when we come across different terms when we're reading the scripture, it's very interesting that perhaps we should look at some of the origins of those names. And so when it's talking about the angel of light, that perhaps there is a reference that, one, it could be Yeshua, and we got to look at it within context, what it means. But there's also the context of Uriel, who is the angel of light. Well, why is he the angel of light? Because he is the one that is responsible for the sun, the moon, and all the luminaries, all the stars. And so that's why he is teaching Enoch. He's teaching Enoch about how to calculate the days, the weeks, the months, and the years, and then the multiples of the years, the 7 years, the 50 years, the 500 years, the 1,000 years, and how to do those type of calculations. And so when you begin to wonder, it's like, well, how in the world do we get a calendar system out of all of this? Well, that's what these chapters detail. And so I appreciate those people that actually went out and were able to read this and sit down and then lay it out, and where we can have a calendar system that tells us when the year begins, when the months begin, what day of the week the month will begin on, and what day of the month that each quarter will begin on. And then it also, of course, lays out, the Shabbats and all that. And we can calculate the feast days from it. And then, of course, is the other very interesting thing is that in Scripture, how many different times do the Scriptures tell us that there's so many days for this, or in such and such year, or at some type of future event that's going to take place, and it gives us the hints of the times and the seasons that those events will take place, or shall we say, when those events have taken place. And when we have the specific calculations that through these instructions that the angel Uriel gives Enoch, then it all makes sense. So that's why I appreciate why when people have gone back and they've studied these things out and they put them on paper, so to speak, or they've done computer calculations, and they give us and they show us what it means. And then, of course, when they put those down into the calculations where we can see it on our own calendar, right? So that, because we're very accustomed to the Gregorian calendar, we're moving forward and we're heading back to the springtime, which we'll get back to the month of Nisan, or the first month. I mean, everything, those months actually were not given names back in the day. They were just counted out: month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we're back to 1 again. So I would have to say that takes us back to chapters 71 through, basically 79. And so if you're like, okay, if you're one of those people that, can put the physics and the calculations and the constellations and the calculations and all that, and you're really good that way, then you could actually go and every one of these details, begin to outline it out, lay it down on a piece of paper and map it out. And you would be able to map out and get what the priestly calendar looks like. And so, and what some people have called the Enoch calendar, because of its origin that we see dictated here within the book of Enoch. And so Uriel, why is he the best teacher? Well, why? Because he is the one that was given charge over the lights. He's the angel of light. So he's the one that therefore knows all the details. Because I was actually thinking about this, is like, well, did Enoch, and I think I even mentioned it before, he's being taught by Uriel, and then did Enoch go outside and stay up all night long and then watch the movement of the moon at night, and every single night he's charting the moon and the phase of the moon that it's in, and then every day is he checking out where on the horizon is the sun coming up, and did he do that for like 3 years, where it's all perfectly calculated on such and such day that the moon came up here on these last 3 years exactly here, but then in the in the next quarter of the year it moved to this other place, and he was able to replicate the process. And did he, how many years did he do that? But I think that Uriel spent time explaining, and then as he's explaining the phases of the sun and the phases of the moon and the positions of the sun and the entry gate and the exit gate within the sky, and where both of those would come up and go down. And then he was like saying, okay, but keep in mind, we're in this quarter or in this month. Now look up, what constellation do you see? What pattern of stars do you see up there? And where is it in position? Because those constellations are moving. And then each new month, the next constellation is directly overhead. I just think that this is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. If so there's a question that came up is, was the book of Enoch written before or after Noah? Is that right? Did I catch that right? And that's a very good question. And I'm going to have to say, or before or after the flood. You know what? I'm going to tell you what the scholars say. The scholars attribute that Enoch, they attribute it to the intertestamentary period between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And a lot of it is because of the discovery of the book of Enoch in multiple copies in the Qumran caves. But what I had mentioned many weeks before, actually several months ago, is that I thought that okay, we could probably say that, but as parchment begins to deteriorate, whatever writing type, was it parchment or was it lambskin or whatever they used to write on, over a period of time it would begin to deteriorate. And so over time, the scribes would rewrite those books, and it would carry forward, maybe another 50 to 100 years, and it's time to rewrite it. And of course, they're going to have multiple copies during that time. And so as copies deteriorate, then the newer copies become the ones that they're using. So what was discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls would be maybe copies of what were original, which may have carried through all the way since before the flood. That's kind of where I'm thinking, is that there's a possibility that I don't think anybody really knows for certain, but if you're going to try to peg me on a particular position, I would have to say it's going to be originated pre-flood. And then the copies were made over the course of the centuries. And then, but if I learn differently, I'll let you know. But I think that makes sense. It makes sense to me, because Enoch being a character, a real life person, and he would have put these pieces together, and then it would have been handed down from generation to generation. And because there's so much in the book of Enoch, if you look at it, how many of these different things in the book of Enoch carry through that we see within the writings, where we see the concepts carried through with other writings within the scriptures of the Old Testament and the New Testament themselves. And that's why we have all these multiple layers, and these multiple layers confirm these different positions and aspects of the faith that we rely on. And that's another good question, Tammy, where you asked, where does the idea of a 360-day year come from? That is also a really good question, because from when I'm looking at the book of Enoch, it's a 364-day year. And in all those details, in the chapters that I mentioned, it actually, tells you how to calculate the months. And of course, if you've been with us, you've been listening to our teachings about the calendar at Life of Worship Ministries. Pastor Sandy did a good teaching on the intercalary days. And whereas, what about those days? Because we have a 365-day year, and we start to get these extra days thrown in. Well, how do you calculate for that? And within the course of there's that adjustment between the end of the year and the beginning of the year, and that's why there might be one or two or several, not more than a week, I think 6 days maybe at the most, of a overlap. We looked at it, we thought the instructions were very clear, and that's why we started our year when we did. But so when, so I've heard different theories about people talking about, well, when at the time of the millennial reign of Messiah, that things are going to shift to the position of the earth as it goes around the sun is going to change, and we will have a 360-day year, and those extra days will be cut off because I guess the speed of the earth around the sun would accelerate, and so, but I don't know if that's but I don't find anything in scripture that really says that, but I could be wrong, but because we think, well, those extra days throw things off, but when you're looking here on the what Enoch describes and how they lay out the days, and it tears apart and says the seasons, and the seasons help you. One of the things that are defined within the 4 seasons is the wind patterns, and that was part of what we were reading on, and all of those different things tells us where we are in time. And because pre-flood, if it's pre-flood, a lot of people say, well, the flood messed up, the movement of the earth, and or was it Nibiru or Planet 7X or whatever it was? It changed the speed of the earth going around the sun, and that's how we get this weird calculation of the earth. I would have to say I don't know, because Enoch said it was 364 days. No, let me rephrase this. Uriel told taught Enoch that it was 364 days. That's what he taught, because Uriel, being in charge of the lights, knew every single detail about it. And get this, he knew it from the perspective of Earth, as opposed to from the perspective of the heavens. Now, that's really unique to me, because it would tell me that Uriel spent probably, I don't know, whenever he got the assignment, that he was in charge of it. So therefore, he could have gotten a divine download, or he studied so that he could then teach and taught Enoch. Just think about that. Before Enoch, did any of the forefathers before Enoch, did any of them know the calculations? I think probably what they did is they probably, well, I won't say this. I think the forefathers did what was right in terms of the calculation of the years. But I think anybody that was not following the faith that was handed down from Adam, down to every one of these that are considered the fathers of the family of Adam, handed down. If you're outside of that, you might be figuring out a different calendar system. You might be among those that would be considered following a Babylonian system, pre-Babylon, but because the only way they would calculate is they would calculate by the phases of the moon, and that's what seems to be dominant in much of culture today. And when you go outside of this, then it seems like most every culture, other than those on the Western calendar, use the moon for the calculation of their year. And so I think this is what grounds us. And I think, and I appreciate that, how it details it here in Enoch. And like I said, I appreciate that there's others that have gone before us, and then they have, and they've laid it out to help give us an understanding. So I want to show something to you. I hope that you all can see it. And let me see if I need to enlarge it just a little bit for you guys. Let's zoom in. Let's see if I can zoom it in one more time. Yeah, that should be a little bit easier for you to see. Okay. So what we've got here is this is at the dsscalendar.org or the DSS Dead Sea Scroll calendar.org. And I have to give credit to this guy right here, Ken Johnson. So Dr. Ken Johnson helped put this together and built the calculator, and so that way we could get several different things all at the same time. Now he uses the month of Tevet, and it says on the Dead Sea Scroll calendar that we are in the month of Tevet, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're in the 10th month. Yeah, because we just came out of Kislev. So this calendar goes around. We're going to get to this one real quick shortly. So we're in the 10th month, 22nd day in the year 5949. Isn't that interesting? 5949. In other words, according to this, we are 51 from the year 6000. Now, keep in mind that when a Hebrew child is born, they're considered 1 year old. So if you were to consider 5,000 millennium coming up to 6,000 millennium, you think, oh man, that means we got another 1,000 years to live. If you consider that, then we are coming up to the seventh millennial reign. So 5949. If you think in the Western thought, think of it as 6949. But in the Dead Sea, for the sake of understanding the Dead Sea Scroll dates, it's 5949. I hope I didn't mess anybody up that part. In other words, we're very, very close to the 7th millennia, which would be the 7,000 year rule of Messiah. And the other thing I want to point out is say, well, it's only the year 5949. Well, yeah, 5949. So 51 years. Well, I'm like, man, I'm not going to. If I live as old as what my grandparents or great grandparents lived, then I won't be around to see Messiah come. But remember in Matthew 24, where it says, unless the days are cut short, that no man would survive. Well, that's what I'm looking at, is that we are living in a time where there's escalations in every single realm that is bringing about the anti-Messiah system and the destruction of mankind through diseases, through war, through famine, through economic downfall. I mean, all of these different things seem to be looming right here on a horizon. And you think, well, and if we're living in a generation where even the movies and television shows are all apocalyptic, aren't they? I mean, they're all talking about end of days type of scenarios where there's, where a lot of people die off, and you think, well, that's kind of threatening. But if we think about what's happening in the world, and we know that the book of Revelation is Yah is telling us about what's going to happen. And of course, the things that are in the book of Revelation are the things that we found in multiple writings in the prophets, in the Psalms, in the even in the Torah, but also in the intertestamentary writings. So in that 400 years that they call the silent years, that we found in the libraries of the Dead Sea Scroll in the priestly library, as well as the libraries there in Egypt that had many duplicate copies, that we can say, wow, the book of Revelation is just reiterating much of what Daniel said, much of what Ezekiel said, much of what Isaiah said, much of what Zechariah and Zephaniah said. All of these prophets who are telling us about the day and the hour that we're living in. And we know that there's just a remnant that survives, and there's a remnant that's preserved. And that's probably the better way to say it. It's the remnant that's preserved. So that's the year, the 10th month, 22nd day, 5949. Gregorian date, January 8th, 2025. Then we have the, like right now, International Standard Time, it's 4:29 a.m. It's already Wednesday over there at the International Standard Time. But, and the Pharisee date, how he says that the Pharisee, I think that's pretty accurate, because that's off the Hillel calendar. They're just on day 8 on the 10th month in their year, 5785. And then we've talked about that. We've talked about how the Pharisees, that they changed the dates. or another way to say it is that they changed the times and the seasons. They changed how they do the calculations because they adopted, or they forced a calendar system of the month using the moon, and which was Babylonian, and it was Greek, and it was the Pharisees who began the party of the Pharisees, who split off and began to take over and take charge during the time of the Hellenists, and when Greece was had come into the land, and they were the ones that ultimately around 40 of the Common Era, in the first century, the year 40 to 60, in that range, there was this battling which party was going to dominate, and that was the Pharisee party. They were the ones that won, and they were the ones that were already using the Hillel calendar, and so therefore they kept the Hillel calendar, but they changed how they calculated when the year started. They changed how the month was going to be calculated, and they changed even where it was always been since the time of, you go all the way back to the time of Aaron, and you can go all the way back to the time of Enoch, where they had calculated it already been, where we would say it's 5949. Well, they even cut off 200 and some odd years. And so that's why they're at 5785. Why? Because they wanted to conceal and hide Messiah. That's the bottom line. They wanted to conceal and hide Messiah. So, so with that, let's go over here to this next screen. And this is where we have, instead of a grid type of calendar. Okay, this is the grid type calendar. This is what we're used to. Like, you go down to the store and buy a calendar. It's a new Gregorian year. So everybody gets a new calendar, puts it on the wall, and it's a grid type. And so what we have on this one, 3 months for spring, 3 months for summer, and then 3 months for autumn, and then 3 months for winter. So this is where we're at. And then on the 10th month, and we're on the 22nd day, this is where we're at. I don't know if you can see my cursor right there. So we're right there. And that is the grid system. That's what we're used to. So this month began with the winter solstice, and it began on Wednesday, 12/18, on December 18th on the Gregorian calendar. Well, that's when we started counting the days. And for the first month of winter, that's what we're used to, right? Okay, so let me go back. You want more details on all this, how this all works together? I just suggest, if you need a refresher on it, go back to the series that Pastor Sandi did at Life of Worship, and they're all still on the Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel, and where she talks about it and lays all these different things out about the calendar, and does an excellent job. She lays a lot of groundwork, and that leads up to specifically the calendar itself. And those are all really, really good to keep in mind to do. So let me bring this back up so you can take a look at it. Now, the Enoch calendar, and I think this is based on the pattern, maybe some of the things that they found. And notice that it's a ring. And it has, the first month, and it goes clockwise around the ring. And in this box that we see, it has the 30 days and 30 days, and then 31 days, 30 days, 30 days, 31 days, 30 days, 30 days, 31 days. So that's how the calendar works. But let's go to this next screen, because it kind of shows you as this is calculating through the year, this little blue thing that's following, and it's calling it has different names. You can look at it yourself, but this is the next thing that I wanted to show. Look at the rings. So the outer ring is the first day, and it follows this circle all the way down to Shabbat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. as it follows it in. This is also extremely interesting because it'll follow into another pattern, which I don't have it here, which calculates in the Shemitahs. It'll calculate in the Jubilees, and then the 500 year, 100 year, 500 year, 1,000 year patterns. And it's all in this type of thing. And one can pick up this type of charting and be able to see exactly where you are in the timeline of history. And anyway, that's why I wanted to bring this up. I just thought it was interesting. You can study it out on your own, and some other pretty good teachings. I don't agree with everything that Dr. Ken Johnson talks about, mainly because he comes from a Christian perspective and he doesn't quite understand the Hebraic roots of our faith. But he did do a pretty good job in terms of calculating how the pattern of the scroll, or the pattern of the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, or the priestly calendar works. Okay, and it can give you an idea. There's some variances that we don't agree on completely, but okay. By the way, quick pause. Life of Worship Ministries. If you want to ever catch any of our services and our studies and all of that, you can catch us on Shabbat on Saturdays at 12 noon Central Time, and we meet and get together for Torah study, and join us online, join us in the chat, and just be part of the study. And as we just tear apart the scriptures one way or the other, however the Spirit's leading us. Then at 3 p.m. on Shabbat, that we have our encounter service. We have a time of praise and worship, ministry time, and it's followed in a separate streamcast, but all at the same, from 3 o'clock to basically 5 o'clock. We start out with praise and worship, and then we jump into a second stream where we have the message. So we'd love for y'all to join us. And if you're ever in town in Amarillo, Texas, come by and be part of that. And you can always go to our website at www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org. And let me see if I can put that on the screen for you guys so you can check that out, and you can get more information there. Or you can go to our Facebook page for Life of Worship Ministries here in Amarillo, Texas. Okay, let's go to the book of Enoch. And I'm going to get too far ahead. My page has changed. Let's go to chapter 80. Chapter 80. And he said, this is Uriel talking to Enoch. It says, and he said, "Oh, Hanok, look on the cipher of the tablets of heaven, which have gradually dropped down, and reading that which is written in it, understand every part of it." So, I mean, it's like a command. He's like, you need to check this out. You really need to understand every part of it. And then I looked on all which was written and understood all. Then I looked on all which was written and understood all, reading the Sefer and everything written in it, all the works of man, and all the children of flesh upon the earth during the generations of the world. Immediately after I blessed Yahweh, the King of glory, those who has thus forever formed the whole workmanship of the world. I just had a thought as I was reading it. It seems like he's reading. He says he's talking about the Sefer of the tablets of heaven, which have gradually dropped down, and reading that which is written in and understanding a part of it. Then I looked on all which was written, I understood, and reading the Sefer and everything written in it, all the works of man. In other words, he's talking about this. He's talking about that history is written in the heavens. And then if one knows how to decipher those celestial lights, you know how that we talked about how the stars all have their different names, then you can actually read by the definition of every one of those names. You can read history, and for that matter, you can read prophecy. You can read what was past, present, and future by reading the heavens. And that's what I think he's talking about here. And all the people of flesh upon the earth during the generations of the world, during the generations of the world. I think it's talking about past generations and future generations there by simply reading the sefer of the tablets of heaven that have gradually dropped down. In other words, there's this process that as we continue to learn, we continue to read through and understand and decipher the heavens, we can learn about this prophetic message that has really spoken and captured the history of every generation, which really blows me away. And Gary, who's been part of our congregation here in Amarillo, has went through and had some teachings about these different stars that are up there within certain constellations and their names. And then and the little ones that he talked about, just as certain stars, you could actually unfold and say, wow, we see the picture of Messiah in it all. And Terry, we're in chapter 80. So verse 4, immediately after, I bless Yahweh, the King of glory, who has thus forever formed the whole workmanship of the world. And I glorified Yahweh on account of his long suffering and blessing towards the children of the world. At that time I said, blessed is the man who shall die righteous and good, against whom no catalog of crime has been written, and with whom iniquity is not found. Now, if you think about that in terms of now how the heavens are recording everything that we do in life, and it's captured by the names of these different stars, how blessed is the one. And I think this is a messianic teaching right there. And we're talking is the one who, because it is blessed the man who shall die righteous and good, against whom no catalog of crime has been written, with whom iniquity is not found. Now, of course, that's not Messiah himself, because, well, Messiah, of course, died and rose again. But think about that. One who is righteous and good, and there's just nothing recorded in the heavens. There's just nothing recorded because he was righteous, because he was good. And it's verse 7, then those three holy ones caused me to approach and placed me on the earth before the door of my house. And they said unto me, explain everything to Methuselah, your son, and inform all your children that no flesh shall be justified before Yahweh, for he is their creator. During 1 year, we shall leave you with your children until you shall again recover your strength, and that you may instruct your family. Write these things and explain them to all your children. But in another year, they shall take you from the midst of them, and they shall take you from the midst of them, and your heart shall be strengthened. For the elect shall point out righteousness to the elect. The righteous with the righteous shall rejoice, congratulating each other. But the sinners with sinners shall die, and the perverted with the perverted shall be drowned. Those likewise who act righteously shall die on account of the works of man, and shall be gathered together on account of the works of the wicked. In those days they finished conversing with me, and I returned to my fellow men, blessing Yahweh of worlds. So, okay, now isn't that interesting? Because now he's saying time is really short, and you need to spend it with your family, and you need to make sure they're trained up, that they have the understanding of what this righteousness is, and rejoice together that they have this heavenly download. I put it in those terms. Whereas those that don't want to hear the message, they're in that category of sinners, and they're going to die. But guess what it says? But they shall die, and the perverted with the perverted, so the sinners with the sinner shall die, and the perverted with the perverted shall be drowned. Shall be drowned. And it makes me kind of wonder, like, well, is it talking about a particular type of people that are perverted? Or shall we say, is this the giants? Are these the giants? Because they are perverted in their DNA. So anything and everything that was perverted in its or from its original design. We're talking about, genetically modified. So we know that the giants are a mixed breed, but then we have all the genetically modified creatures that were being formed because of the fallen angels. And then we had the modified different food products. All of that's going to be wiped out in the flood. So we get a little inkling that here Enoch is been told by the angels that, hey, check this out. You need to spend some time. You need to make sure you train up your family, and because there's going to be a drowning. Wow. So it sounds definitely pre-flood. Yeah. So, and I return to my fellow men, blessing Yahweh of the worlds, or Yahweh of worlds, Yahweh of worlds. I think that's kind of an interesting phrase there. Blessing Yahweh of worlds. And which you kind of think about different worlds. A lot of times we think of this is the world that remember that song? We are the world. We are the children. Okay, never mind. Okay. I really didn't ever like that song when they sang it, but it popped into my head, so I shared it with you. Okay. We only think of it as this is like one world, but there's all these different planets out there, but in essence, they're like different worlds. So Yahweh created them all, but there's just this one planet where mankind lives, that we had a Messiah that came and saw our state and laid his life down so that we could live with him and be his bride. And there's no other world that Messiah, I mean, think about that. Messiah having to go and die. Or you might say, well, maybe these other worlds, they don't have a Hasatan, an adversary, that constantly is fighting against them. Or maybe they don't have free will. And so, I don't know. That's above my pay level. And I think we haven't done a very good job in this world, and we need to do better before time passes in terms of making sure that the gospel of the kingdom is preached into all the world, and then the end shall come. So chapter 81. Now my son, Methuselah, so this is Enoch's son, all these things I speak unto you, and I write for you. To you I have revealed all, and have given you Sepharim of everything. So scrolls, scriptures, these books of everything. Preserve, my son Methuselah, the Sepharim written by your father, that you may reveal them to future generations. So here we have, actually, he's talking about, look, I've recorded all this, and now it's handed to you. You got to take this library and make sure it's preserved by passing it down to every generation and making sure they take care of it, so every generation understands and knows. I mean, think about this. Enoch, by much of the Christian church out there, has been a forbidden book. Well, we don't need the book of Enoch. Our church forefathers chose not to add it to the canon of the scriptures. But why? Because there's actually other parts of Christianity, like the Orthodox that have, or the Ethiopian Orthodox that find it has a very authoritative position within scriptures. So verse 3, wisdom have I given you to your children, and your posterity, that they may reveal to their children for generations forever this wisdom in their thoughts, and that those who comprehend may not slumber, but hear with their ears, that they may learn this wisdom and be deemed worthy of eating wholesome food. Think about this, is that we know that there was only 8 that survived, because they were in the ark, and yet here he's talking to Methuselah, who is actually, he has his children, but how many? Because when Methuselah died, that's when the flood came. So who was who survived of all the different children that Methuselah had. I mean, we don't know how many he had, but we know there's Noah, who had his wife, and he had his 3 sons and their wives. And I don't think that was the whole family of Methuselah. And you think about, I've just not been successful with my family. And I mean, I've told them the truth, and I've done, taught them about Sabbath and Shabbat and the word and all that. And they've walked away from the faith, and they're living their own lives. And we think, but here, and not, this is not an excuse or anything, but here, even Methuselah probably had, I mean, how old was he? He probably had lots of children, and how many of them actually listened to him? How many actually, listen? There's Noah. Noah listened, and Noah's 3 sons listened, and their wives came with them. So, and that's what restarted the generations of mankind. So I think every generation has struggled with loved ones, and whether they, we want them to know the truth, we love them into the truth, and yet life passes by, and a lot of times those loved ones don't make it. But on the other side of it, we trust Yah that he's going to move by the power of his Holy Spirit, and we're not going to give up, because how many different people, because they stuck with it, and their children or their husbands or their wives or both did come to Yeshua, right? So don't ever give up. Don't give up on them. And if there's anything, get them to repent and follow Yeshua. I mean, if there's anything to do, is just get them to that point in time. But faith without works is dead. And so therefore we have to practice what the word says, and we need to teach them. Well, what does the Bible say? That's why we study Torah, which talks about, how we walk this life out. And it's not just the Torah. Remember, I was talking about this on Shabbat, is that there's more to walking this life out. It's our prayer life. It's our walking in the power of the Holy Spirit. It is making sure that we're looking out for those that are less fortunate than ourselves. There's these other acts of kindness that are actually part of our halakha, our walk. And I think that's really significant that we keep those things in mind. That, yeah, we want to keep Torah, and it shows us these guidelines and these principles of life, and the feast days and Shabbat and eating clean, and it tells us that it teaches about the difference between the clean and the unclean, the holy and the profane, and all of those type of things. But that other aspect of the halakha is the agadah, and that is the inspiration that we get from reading the scriptures. It's where the essence of the word begins to speak through it, and we gain additional understanding. And we want our kids to know that. But if we get them to Yeshua, and if we can get them to begin to walk uprightly and get into those next steps, that's where faith meets works, and works not by works alone that we're saved, but it is when it's that coupling where we say, oh, that's why I keep Shabbat. Now we're keeping the works of Yah. That's why we keep the feast days. That's how we keep the works of God. That's why we love our neighbor. That's keeping the works of Yah. That is the coupling of all these different things that we do, and we live this out, and don't ever give up. And until our mission and our purposes are completed, we don't ever give up from what we're doing and what Yah has done, and what he's purposing within our lives to fulfill within us. And it's like, Father, well, give me the power and the holy, the inspiration of your Spirit, the anointing to carry this thing. Blessed are all the righteous. Blessed are all who walk in righteousness, in whom is no crime, as in sinners, when all their days are numbered. So just think about that. I mean, we have this concept of, and we've been taught that our days are numbered, but it's really that our days are without end, but the sinner's days are numbered. They're numbered up to the point in time that when they die, they come to the judgment seat of Yah. That's it. But as believers, whether we're in the body or out of the body, it doesn't matter. Our days are without number, and therefore we are eternal. This body is just, our current state that we're living in. Well, I got to go. We'll have to come back here in chapter 81 next week. And I hope maybe that kind of spurred you on to be thinking about a few different things, but I sure appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. And I hope you got a little bit out of it. And for those that are going to stick with us, we'll see you back on the Life of Worship YouTube channel for Shabbat, for Torah, noon, Shabbat. We'll see you then. Shalom. Or locally. Bye.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lamnetwork.tv where you will find this show and all the other live Lamb show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network. We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lamnetwork.tv website. I'm Sandi Craig, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.